Good afternoon, guys. Welcome to the Shay Show. My name is Shay Bearfield. We're going to be chatting it up with Rabbi Andrew Jacobs. He is, again, one of these brilliant souls that I've met here on the gram. We haven't even had a personal conversation, but I just looked at his feed and saw what this man was put out into the world. Any person at this current stage in life that is committed to writing a good story and committed to pushing others to do the same, I know who wants to talk with them. Me. I want to speak with them. So he has given me the honor. He said, yes. He said, I do, even though he hadn't even met me yet. So today we're just going to dive into discussion spirituality. I want to talk to him about his process. I want to talk to him about bits of his story, Kabbalism. He is a rabbi. He teaches for a living. He is the head. He is the teacher, the spiritual teacher for a beautiful congregation outside of Fort Lauderdale. He will be coming here any moment now. He's never been, I don't think he's done this before. I'm trying to set myself up, y'all, without you seeing my laundry that needs to be done over on the other side. Let's see. There he is, you guys. Hey, I'm going to go get him. Hey, Rabbi Andrew.
How are you? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you beautifully. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
Oh my goodness. I was just bragging about you and saying that I'm just so grateful that you said yes. You and I haven't met in person as yet. And why I discovered you is I really follow people who are doing great things in this world. And I think currently, if there ever was a time when any voice that is adding to the larger story and pushing people to leading a good story, if ever there was a time for that voice or those voices to be amplified, I think it is now. So you are one of said voices to me. I looked and I was like, oh, I need to learn from this rabbi.
That's an honor. Thank you.
Well, Rabbi, I start with everybody the same place. Can you please tell us where you are located in this world?
Sure. I am located in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Love
and you
it.
will have to excuse us, we Floridians. I'm not really a Floridian. I'm a New Yorker, but I've been down here 18 years, and it's cold down here. And I won't tell you what that means because I'm not
So it's
certain where you
72, it's 68 or
It's
something.
like, it might actually be in the 60s, so I had to go put a sweater on, and I'm
Chilly. Well, here's something you don't know about me. I'm from Freeport, Bahamas. You may not know that. So I am used to hearing, I am used to hearing my mom tell me when she comes here to Charlotte, North Carolina, she's like, ooh, do we need jackets? And she's saying that when it's like high 60s. And I'm like, Mom, I promise I'm good. You don't want
Well,
to
the
catch me
Bahamas are our neighbors. I go there. I used to go there a lot before COVID, so I know, they're a lot like us with that cold weather.
Exactly. Wimps. So we'll talk about you when we get off the camera.
There you go.
So, I was reading a bit of your story, Rabbi Andrew, and please tell us a little bit of what made you decide to become a rabbi.
It's a great question. I grew up very disconnected from my Jewish roots. Two wonderful parents who gave me a spiritual upbringing, but for various different reasons, and both Jewish, but for various different reasons, kind of fell away from their faith, their tradition. Growing up, I grew up, and this could be offensive to some people, so I don't mean it to be that way, but I grew up with a secular Christmas and a secular Easter. We just did the Easter egg hunt for the Christmas trees.
Right. I have Jewish friends who do that.
Right. So I knew that I had Jewish roots, but it didn't mean anything to me. As I started to get older, my early teens, I began to do a little history. And my mother's father, who I was very close to, started to show me pictures and of family in Europe. One was a rabbi. It was the first time I'd really heard the word. And I felt like a light.
You weren't even going to synagogue? It was not a regular part of your life?
Not at all. The closest thing we got was, say, around Christmas time, my father would sometimes pull out the Hanukkah menorah.
Okay.
And I think he did it more because there was a part of him that wanted to give this to his kids.
Yes.
But I didn't really know what it meant.
Right.
And so it's in that early teen years that I realized that I was a part of something much bigger than I could wrap my head around. And I realized it was a part of me that was there, but also a huge part that was missing. And
Yes.
so that's when I kind of began not the quest to become a rabbi, but to figure out what it meant to be Jewish.
Yes.
It wasn't until I did a lot of learning in college um, when I had a professor who was incredibly influential in my life, who
We all have that one teacher.
we all do. That's right.
We do.
And she was tough. She was hard. She pushed me hard.
Those are
But
usually our favorites.
right, right. And my plan was, I went to school. I went to college. I wanted to go into acting and music and theater. That's what I
I see
wanted to
it.
do. Yeah,
I see
right.
it. Mm-hmm. All
And
over.
she pulled me aside one day and she said to me, "You've got to be a rabbi." And I
Oh,
looked at her and I remember laughing.
was she
And
Jewish?
she was Jewish. She was
Ooh.
very religious, a very religious Jew.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "What are you laughing about?" I said, "You grew up with all of this.
Mm-hmm.
I've maybe, at that point, I was my senior year in college. So I'd been doing Jewish for about 3, 4 years,
Just
you
been
know?
doing it for a
Yeah.
few
And I
years
said
now.
to her, I said, how can I be a rabbi? This is all new to me. I didn't feel like I was entitled to it. I didn't feel
Mm,
like it was genuinely mine. And she looked at me
sure.
and she said, "That's exactly why you need to do it."
Oh, I need to we need to say her name. I already love her.
Her
What's her
name
name?
is Betsy Amaru, Amaru. I was
Betsy
a
Andrew.
student at Vassar College. She was the Judaic Studies professor there. She lives in Israel, I believe now. In fact, I've been trying to reach out to her, and I have not been able to get in touch. I saw her several years ago in Israel. So if
Okay.
she's out there, anybody knows exactly where she is, somebody let me know.
Please, we want to find her. You know, you said something, Rabbi, that I want to delve into. I want to go back and ask you. You said, I was diving into what it meant for me to be Jewish. When you started diving in what it meant to you to be Jewish, what did you find?
So this is kind of soul talk for me. I
Yes.
mean, I very much believe that we have these parts of us that we can't touch or describe very well in words.
Mm-hmm.
But my soul felt a connection to all those who came before me, and it felt a yearning for the lessons that I knew were there, but I never really understood. And I'm still figuring them out. But
Mm,
it was that connection, again, to something just so much bigger than little old me.
I felt
And
that too. I felt that exact precise thing. Just recently, maybe like a year ago, I was on a plane, crazy. And
remember those days?
yes, yes. It's like, and hugging and kissing people, shaking
Uh-huh.
hands, just wild. And I was going to, it was the start of me signing a deal with a larger entity for my talk show. And it felt very significant for me. And when I was on that plane, and I've always kind of felt exactly what you're saying, but most recently, when I was on that plane and I was headed out to California, it was just, I felt so connected to all of the stories that got me to where I was. I felt so incredibly, like spiritually connected. I felt absolutely a part of a larger machinery, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like this piece that came, and it gave me a great sense of purpose and a great sense of contemplation and unity. I felt like I was connected to my ancestors. I did.
Yep. Yep. It's also a sense of belonging and
Yeah.
community
Yeah.
that is just incredible. And for a kid in my early teens, it was meaningful. And the older I got, it became meaningful. And now as the rabbi of a congregation where I am in some ways, the spiritual leader,
Yes.
but yet I feel led and I led by my community, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel it's a belonging because of my community. It's just incredible. And I think that this transcends whatever label you want to put on it,
Correct.
Judaism, Christianity, Islam, whatever. It transcends the
It
name. We each
does.
have to find one that speaks to us. So,
Yeah, I've always felt very called to Judaism. Like I've always had Jewish friends in my life. It's always been something that I wanted to dig into and know. And I think I kept wondering, like, why is this such a interesting? Probably because I was raised in the Christian world, and Christianity is a Judeo Christian, faith. But so there were probably similar things that felt similar, but I think it felt ancient. It felt connected to the Ancient of Days. I think that's what it is for me.
yeah, agree. Yeah, yeah.
When you decided okay, so you have this wonderful professor who speaks into your life. She's like, you know what? You need to be a rabbi. And you defend why you shouldn't, because as we all do, the reason why we shouldn't do a thing is because we're not prepared enough. We're not enough for it, whatever that thing is, that mantle that's like bigger or over us, right?
Yeah.
So what point do you go, I'm doing this?
So it's an interesting story because I, I still have that. I was a theater kid before it was cool to be a theater
Right.
kid, right? So I still have that in me.
Oh, I
But
love
my
you.
parents did something very smart. When it was my junior year in college and all of my classmates were traveling to all these exotic places to work around the world, and my parents said, listen, you want to be an actor? I'm going to get you an apartment in New York, and you go and you work in the theater
Your parents are
world.
good.
Yeah, right. Well, they were very smart because I don't think they wanted a starving son as a starving actor's son. So I went and I worked and
I love
I
that.
did some very minor things, and I was a stage manager for an off-Broadway theater, and I was closing theaters up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was working with people who are now, my age. I saw them as old back then, right?
Oh my God, doesn't that kill you when you think about
Right,
it? You're like, and then there was this older teacher, and I was like, wait a
right.
minute, they were 42. Yeah.
Exactly. These people were so talented, and they so loved what they did.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, were they struggling just to survive,
Right.
financially.
Woo.
So I talked with some of them, and some of them have made it, and whatever. But it made me realize that maybe I need something that puts food on the table.
Yeah. And how badly do you want this thing?
Right, and I still love it.
Hmm.
So that's when I said maybe I should look at some other types of things. So that was a good seed that they planted in my
Right.
head. So when I was all ready to graduate college, I had my MFA application ready for Northwestern University, where I was going to go and I was going to study. And all of this stuff, the professor telling me to be a rabbi, me worrying about how I was going to survive as an actor. And I said, okay, why don't I take a year off? So I took a year off, and I said, I'm going to work in the Jewish world.
Ooh.
Now, this was in the days.
Toes in the water. Toes in the
Yeah,
water.
exactly. So this was 1992. You're
Ooh.
much younger than me.
No.
Uh,
92. I just graduated from high school. Yes, I
all
guess.
right, so you're younger than me.
Just
But
a little bit.
this was pre-internet. I remember my parents were living in New York at the time. I took the Yellow Pages. Remember that? And
Oh,
I opened it up
yes.
to Jewish organizations, and I called every Jewish organization in the book.
I love it.
Now, what I didn't know, because I still really wasn't that learned, one of the organizations I called was called the Jewish Defense League. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with them,
I'm
but
not.
they got themselves in a little bit of trouble because they're kind of aligned with kind of terrorism. They're like
Oh,
extreme Jews. What? I didn't know. And they started yelling at me at the phone. Who are you calling? And why are you calling us? Whatever.
you had Jewish in the name, okay?
It had Jewish in the
Unequivocally,
name. They got a call for
J's.
me. That's right. I called everyone. And included in that was
Oh,
a
that's the
call
best.
to Hillel of New York. Now, Hillel is the group that works on college campuses.
Yeah.
And they said, come in and talk to us. Well, that was another life-changing moment for me, because here I was, fresh out of college, a Jewish kid who was passionate about his Judaism, looking to expand. And they put me at Hofstra University, on Long Island as the like the program director for Jewish kids. And again, and I was working with an incredible rabbi, Rabbi Meir Middleman, who was he was an Orthodox rabbi, and I thought he wasn't going to know what to do with me. He knew exactly what to do with me. He let me kind of experiment and teach and thrive, and he allowed me to realize that what my teacher and Vassar had to say about me needing to be a rabbi was true, because there were so many kids out there who were just like me,
just like you,
who were searching, and that's what got me excited.
And have this rich history. Have this rich history, aren't exploring this rich history, but because we all are humans, we all deeply, profoundly want to be connected to that which is bigger than us. I don't care what your religious entity.
Right. People are the soul searchers. We're searching, we're
right?
Spiritual searchers. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what got me so excited that I said, okay, I might give this a try. And then went off to rabbinical school. And the neat thing is I have been able to merge my love of theater and performance with the rabbinate, because while what
did you call it?
The rabbinate, sorry, Rabbinate.
The rabbinate. Okay.
Yeah. Like the priesthood,
the rabbinate. Thank you.
And because what I love about theater is being able to stand before people and help create a transformative moment.
Oh, glory.
That's what being a rabbi is.
Can non-Jewish people come to a synagogue service?
Yeah. I mean, listen, a lot of people don't realize they can, so they don't.
Yeah.
But I always invite people. And, the greatest part of COVID and pandemic is moving all of our services online. I've met such great people who've never felt comfortable walking into a synagogue, who join us online and then contact me afterwards with questions. It's so great. So.
And I want people to know too, like, what is so cool, at least, and my understanding might be limited too, but a lot of rabbis have gone to Hebrew school since they were wee little ones. Right. So I want people to really understand that when Rabbi Andrew Jacobs is saying he felt ill prepared, he felt like he was the last person who should be doing this, what he really probably was comparing to, because at this point you probably start realizing, like, wait, most kids are, literally studying Hebrew in elementary school.
That's right.
And you were not, if your parents were not, if that wasn't. So
no.
The reason why I want people to hear that is whatever people are feeling called to, whatever things, those mantles, we all have those quiet things. And this was like God tapping you on your shoulder, and had been, in my opinion, consistently regarding the rabbit, rabbinate.
Yeah. Rabbinate.
I think that was God's tap, tap, tap on your
100%.
shoulder all along. And what I want people to really see is this man is a rabbi today. And if you go to his website, like I did, you are helping transform people's lives. So there are people who are feeling a rap, tap, tap on their shoulder about something completely different. And I know you feel ill-equipped, ill-prepared, not learned or schooled or erudite enough, not talented enough. But what I do know is when that rap, tap, tap is on your shoulders, you have everything you need. Because here you are, brother.
100%. And I feel badly, and I try to really empower people. If you feel that, you got to act on it, because it is God speaking to you.
Absolutely.
It's speaking directly to your soul. And it's scary. It's scary. I had to start off, when I went out to started rabbinical school, you're right. I was starting with a lot of kids. Listen, there were a few other people like me, but most of these people had gone to Hebrew school or Jewish camps,
right,
or been to Israel. I had to go into I think it was 10 weeks course to learn Hebrew. I was given 10 weeks to master the language.
And that's scary.
And it was basically, I think it was 6 days a week, 7 hours a day. And it was hard. And I'm a tough student. I'm a good student. I work hard. This was the hardest thing. I was in tears.
What's the fluency level that they need? Do you need to be able to read and write it?
Well, here's the challenge. So when you go to rabbinical school, you're not speaking modern Hebrew. You're
Right.
studying like the Bible, which is ancient Hebrew, which is biblical Hebrew, and there's different. So you really need to be able to read, and need to know some of the grammar, but more of the ancient stuff.
Uh,
So it was hard, and I have stumbled along the way. And there's still a part of me that has insecurities.
mhm,
Many, many, many. I've been doing this now for 20 years, and you know, I love looking up to many of my colleagues, especially those
mhm,
colleagues who have had tremendous experience. And there's a part of me that feels, I'll never be what they are. But I've learned to realize that I shouldn't look at it that way.
mhm.
I bring to it things that they can't relate to, and together we offer the larger community great things.
I mean,
So,
it's 100% true. Um, you're making me think about a poem I just recently referenced yesterday and something that I wrote online. And years ago, one of my professors shared with me a poem of one of her professors. And I wish I could remember his full name, but all I can remember his name was Brother Francis. That was the only part that I can recall at this stage. And in his poem, he says, I'm not going to be who I was going to be. You changed all that. And you're not who you are, and you're not going to be who you are going to be, because I changed all that. Then he further pauses. He says, because who are we? We are us. And who are we going to be? We're going to be who we never could have been without one another. So my point is, if everybody had the same level of whatever, what kind of story would that be written? What kind of person would be forming? Like you guys in your different experiences, different levels of education or history, you come together and you create something that could never have existed before without the parts that you are.
right,
Yeah.
100%,
Yeah.
absolutely,
I love that.
absolutely.
So so you decide, how long does it take one to become a rabbi?
Okay, so rabbinical school is 5 years after your 4 years of undergraduate.
Oh, so
So,
undergraduate, like say international business. Could it be
right,
arts?
you can do undergraduate in anything. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, doesn't matter. Now, most rabbinical schools back then, and I believe still now, they want to see a little real world experience too. So they don't
Okay.
want you going right out. So I worked for a year on the college campus. And then I was determined, I was trying, there's lots of different flavors of Judaism.
Right.
You
Like
know, there's,
Christianity.
yeah, there's, there's the Orthodox all the way down to what we call renewal Judaism and lots of things in between.
Right.
I was working for an Orthodox rabbi.
Sure.
I knew I wasn't an Orthodox Jew,
Yes.
and we can talk about some of those things, but I wound up going to what we call a conservative seminary, and I went out on the west coast in Los Angeles because I
Uh,
just thought that was cool. I was going to go become a rabbi in California. So I went out there, but I got in a
Hollywood
lot of,
rabbi.
it's right, right. But I got in a lot of trouble out there.
Why?
Because here I am. I mean, I went to a very progressive undergraduate institution, Vassar
Uh-huh.
College. So I
Bastard.
was taught to question, 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 question. Don't
Right.
accept anything. Question some more,
Absolutely.
and then
Critical
still disagree.
thinking.
Right, right. So I'm going into the seminary,
Yes, I understand.
and I was asking a little bit. I was asking too many questions. For example, there was a class on keeping kosher. Okay,
Hmm.
Jews, we have very specific rules and laws on keeping kosher. And to me, one of the answers I was given was that it's a kinder way of ending an animal's life, which
Yeah.
there is truth to that.
Yes. That's the
But
answer
I
I've
was
been
lost.
given.
Yeah, I was 22 years old.
Hmm.
I knew exactly what I was saying. So I raised my hand and I said, well, that's a bunch of you know what. That doesn't make any sense to me. Well, I was kind of asked to speak to the dean. I realized I wasn't in the right place.
Why was that answer
Spiritually.
offensive?
I think it was a combination of coming from a little bit of an arrogant 22-year-old,
Hmm.
and the rules are the rules.
Right.
And your job right now as a young rabbinical student isn't necessarily to question the rules. Your job is just to learn them. But that's not how I needed to touch it and feel it and
Yes.
taste it and twist it. And
Yes.
so
And know
I felt,
why, the
and
why.
right. And at the same time, because of the way I was raised, be able to come to it because there's meaning to it.
Yes.
And not just because I was told.
And
So,
in my head, wouldn't we all want that?
right. I mean, so then something else happened. I was living in Northridge, California in 1993.
Mm-hmm.
And those of us who are old enough know that there was a huge earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
And my apartment fell down.
Really?
And this little kid from the East Coast said, you know what? I'm not staying out here. I packed up my bags within about 5 months and I moved back to the East Coast. There was an East Coast seminary in New York.
Uh-huh.
I loved Los Angeles, and if that earthquake hadn't have happened, I probably would still have been out there. I loved it. But it was too much. I was questioning my place in Judaism,
mm-hmm.
and I was scared for my physical safety after the earthquake. And I thought, maybe I doubted the rabbinate path. I doubted becoming the rabbi because I just thought And
you already felt on the outside.
I felt on the outside, and I was being told I was asking too many questions, and it was really my own insecurity. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to become a professor.
I love you.
So at the seminary, at the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York on 116th Street up there by Columbia,
mm-hmm.
I got my master's degree. I combined all my loves in Jewish art and culture.
Ooh,
and I worked at the
Jewish, excited.
It was awesome. A Jewish museum in New York, and I thought, I'm gonna go work on a campus. I'm gonna be a professor. But that college professor of mine, I kept hearing her in the back of my head saying, you got to be a rabbi. You got to be a rabbi. So I started looking at other seminaries,
mm-hmm.
and found the seminary in Philadelphia called the Reconstructionist Rabbinical Seminary, which comes at Judaism from a much more it takes it. There's an expression in Judaism where when you take a Jewish book or the Torah, you
mm-hmm.
say in Hebrew, hafokba v'hafokba dekuleba. Turn it and turn it, because everything is in it. Like, shake it up, look at it this way, look at it that way, and that's how they taught. And I went down there and I started my rabbinic studies after my master's degree and loved it, because those questions I was asking that I was getting in trouble for were nothing compared to the questions my classmates were asking, right?
Right.
So,
and
so I did.
If what you're pursuing, sorry to interrupt, but if what you're pursuing holds its own and it has heft and meaning and greatness, will your questions destroy it? And if my questions will destroy the existence of a thing, maybe this is not the thing for me then.
Right.
Your questions should not destroy your questions, because I believe that what you were seeking after is greater than anything, right? So there's no way it is going to be destroyed because you asked too hard of a question that was too perplexing and without answers. You see what I'm saying?
No, I agree. And listen, the seminary that I was at, I think it was just the timing of where I was spiritually, and what they were teaching, because my wife actually went to that seminary and had an incredible education.
I love it.
She's a rabbi too.
No, see, I did not know that on your website. I couldn't tell. I just knew that she was cool.
We met in rabbinical school. So,
who made the moves? Who made the moves, Rabbi?
Well, so it's actually funny because we were both. That's when I was getting my master's degree, and she was getting her PhD in Bible. Like, we're like Jewish people.
Just really not smart people I'm talking to.
So we used to sit in the back of the classroom, and we used to make fun of all the rabbis, right, in the class with us. We were in Hebrew class together, and we're like, oh, those people want to be rabbis,
Nerds.
Then we lost touch with each other, and then we found each other when we were both in rabbinical school, and we made fun of each other, saying, you became one of those people.
I love it. You guys are like the rock stars who are like, don't trust anybody over 30. And then you look at
exactly. Don't trust those rabbis, and then we become them.
Yeah, you're like, actually, they're pretty cool over 35, right? I love that. How long have you been married?
We have been married for 21 years.
Wow. I love this. Okay. So give that. So 4 years of rabbinical school.
Well, 5 years. So I did 4 years of undergraduate, then I did a year off to work. Then I did 2 years for the master's degree.
Okay.
And then 5 years of rabbinical school.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And you have to go that route in order to get to, you have to do undergraduate, 2 years.
You don't necessarily, some
And then
people, if if you have the skills and are emotionally and spiritually prepared, they might take you right away. I know for me, I wasn't ready for rabbinical school until I really started at the Reconstructionist Seminary.
Oh, so there are some people who could go from a 4-year undergraduate degree to 5 years of rabbinical studies and be done in 9.
Exactly.
Wow, that's still a long time. That is a
It's
serious
a
commitment.
lot
I mean, I
of
went to law school, and that was just like 4-year undergrad, 3 years law school,
right.
done. You know what I mean? You're done.
Right.
But I'm like, gosh, this is a lot. So
it is a lot.
So at a certain point, you really have to be committed to this study and this I think maybe this way of life, right? Because it's its own journey. What are your parents thinking at this time?
It's interesting. For a while, my parents felt very, very guilty because they felt that they didn't give me the tools that I needed to find the spiritual path that I'm on. But I told them if they had given it to me in the best way that they knew how, I would have done something else with my life.
Yeah.
So they gave me a gift by giving me this freedom to just kind of journey and figure it out. So,
and the freedom to create the hunger, the freedom to be hungry on your own, to be hungry for it. No one forced you to be hungry.
No.
You were hungry on your own. You had the space to create that hunger.
Right. My sister, who's just a year and a half younger than I am, she teases me to this day, because she is not very religious in any way, but she's got the big brother who's always like, let's do a little Judaism in that house. Let me see my nieces and nephews, and let's talk to them a little about a little Judaism in their life.
Right, because you weren't bar mitzvahed until you were 26 years old.
26. When I started seminary is when I said, you know what, I better do this.
Yes.
Yep. I didn't have it, when little babies are born in the Jewish world, they get Hebrew names. I didn't give myself a Hebrew name until I started that Hebrew class I told you about in Los Angeles.
What is your Hebrew name?
So my Hebrew name, so my classmates, what's that?
Can we know that? Am I asking
someone? Of course. So Andrew's my English name, so I wanted a name close to that. So my classmates in that Hebrew class gave me the name Aryeh, which means lion. And then I wanted to honor one of my great-grandmothers whose last name was Wolf. And that family has there's no wolves that I know of, so I took the Hebrew name Zev, which is wolf. So I'm Lion Wolf, Aryeh Zev.
Ooh, I love this. Aryeh Wolf.
But here, I'll let you in on an embarrassing story.
Give it to me.
So I'm terrible at spelling in English, and then you throw in that I got to spell in English, in Hebrew.
And ancient Hebrew.
So little did I know that Zev has a silent letter in it.
I?
Okay?
Is it an I?
It's like the ah sound. So Hebrew is mainly consonants.
Yeah.
There's an aleph in the middle.
Uh-huh.
So I, again, that cocky young 20-something, I knew how to spell it. And when I went to rabbinical school, they asked me what my Hebrew name was, and I wrote it down. I was all proud because I could write in Hebrew at that point. So apparently I was, I'll be as proper as possible. I wasn't Lion Wolf. Because of my misspelling, I was lion with syphilis. When you leave the letter out of the word, wolf becomes syphilis. So it was really quite a lesson in how to learn how to spell in Hebrew.
And also, sometimes the details do matter.
Sometimes
those finer points. I love that.
They didn't tell me that in my admissions interview to rabbinical school. Apparently, they caught that error, but they didn't bother to tell me until they were making my diploma 5 years later. When the head of the Hebrew program called me in, and she said, "Do you want to see how you spelled your name on your application?" We had a good laugh.
Because you had changed it by then. By then you
Well, by then I knew, but I didn't even realize that I had filled it out incorrectly. But to me, it's also just part of my story. As a kid who really wasn't raised with it, I was still learning it. My name was brand new. What did I know?
Rabbi, you're a joy.
Either that or you think I'm crazy, right?
No, that's so real. I think I not even having gone to service, and I'm like, ooh, when am I going to be in Fort Lauderdale? Because I want to go. I already know that you're a great teacher and a great leader. And when you, by the way, when you read all the different comments that people have, if you, when you do the Googles on you, people just love your teaching, and they love how effusive you are with your words and your wanting to disseminate information. And it seems from the different comments that I see, the thing that people really get from you, and what I'm also feeling, is you want them to be curious. And so you like to put things out there that would hearken a question, that would make them lean in, because you understand it's going to lead to greater depth and meaning in their lives. And I like that about you. So I want to know, when you become a rabbi, how does one then actually kind of get a job? Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, so you've graduated from school, you've done all the studies, but now, just like I was in acting and realizing, man, all these people, how do I then translate that into a paying gig, if you will?
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound weird? Or
it has
crass?
changed a lot over the years, but what basically, there are actually rabbinic unions.
Oh.
And you join a union, and then they have synagogues that affiliate with them and post jobs with them. As things have evolved, I would say, in the American Jewish world over the past 10, 15 years or so, a lot of synagogues don't affiliate with movements anymore, and a lot of rabbis don't. So there are,
like movements. When you say that, what do you mean?
Good. Denominations.
Okay.
Thank you for, so, the Reform movement, the Reconstructionist movement, and so those synagogues will sometimes talk to each other and talk to the rabbinic union and put out jobs. I have the position I have now because I was part of the Reconstructionist Rabbinical Association, and my congregation was affiliated with them now. But there are now job websites, like the rabbi's version of LinkedIn type of thing.
I love that.
Where people look for jobs. But there's a whole new area of, and rabbis can also work for hospitals, schools. But I think the area that most interests me is the entrepreneurial rabbi.
Ooh, tell me about him.
It's the rabbi that doesn't necessarily need a congregation, but can do a startup, can think out of the box. Because if you look at the trend in America, with the millennials and younger, they're not rushing to go and pay for membership, right? So we need rabbis who can think really out of the box.
You were made for this. I mean, honestly, even your pedigree specifically, and your pursuit and your journey to it. Yes, I get where you're going.
I love my congregational work, and I'm blessed to have a congregation. But I think if anybody's watching now who's considering rabbinical school, like, they need to really think about what the future of Judaism is going to look like, or just religion in America is going to look like 10, 15 years from now.
Sure.
I don't think anybody can really tell us.
What do you think it's going to look like?
I do question whether or not we're all going to be rushing off to our mosques and churches and synagogues as much as we do now, because we do it less than we did it 10 years ago. Sure. I think that we need to figure out new ways of creating sacred community, sacred gathering places.
I think COVID is making us come up with stuff.
100%. I mean, that's where, as much as I despise COVID, the ability to welcome people virtually there's a blessing in it, and we're all kind of learning how to grow and change with this. Prior to that, I and many people much more extensively than me have been doing, experiences in a coffee shop or in a restaurant or in a park, just kind of, they're calling it, like pop-up Judaism. You just do it. And it gives people the connection. Now, the challenge is, rabbis and priests and imams, we all need to put food on our table too. So you got to make certain. That's why we really need those entrepreneurial minds in there to learn how to figure out how you can survive as a spiritual leader in the world today. And that's a challenge. But it's an exciting challenge, I think, for the right people.
I do too. I just out of curiosity, like in the Christian world, specifically in America, it's very different in Europe. It's, but specifically the evangelical Christian American whole thing. There's always like these rock star pastors, like where you're like, congregation of 50,000. And I'm like, oh, okay. Do we see that in Judaism?
We really don't. I mean, there are some rabbis, some of my colleagues, and some of the larger and older congregations, say in New York or Los Angeles, who have large places, but they are not the rock star. I mean, I have a couple of friends down here in South Florida who are those rock star Christian pastors, and it's like, I'm honored to be around you.
Yes.
But it's fun to learn from them because they are doing some really interesting things. I mean, theologically, we're on very different pages. Right. But yet, I have gone and watched them do what they do, and they connect with people in a way that I think we all can learn from. I personally wouldn't want that celebrity type status. Mm-hmm. But boy, oh boy, would I love to be able to have, 3 services with 12,000 people coming.
Wow, I know.
The amount of people they reach is astounding.
It is astounding.
So we have much to learn from them.
Tell me this though, does the Jewish faith, and I'm going to ask you this question so I can learn, and other people who watch this can learn. I heard you refer to, you say, and some of the Jews, is that proper? Can non-Jewish people say, yes, he's a Jew, she is a Jew, or do you say they are a Jewish person? I'm not trying to be funny, because
I think I've heard people say that. I think I've heard people say that it's. I mean, I have no problem. I'm proud. I am a Jew.
Right.
So I don't see it as all a derogatory.
It's a negative thing. Let's not in the pejorative. See, I just was. I didn't know, and I had been asked that question.
It's a great question. Yeah. I think it's fine.
Okay, cool. I just want it was kind of like the black, question.
Right.
Is it African American, or can I call you black? I'm like, I'm black, and it's all right. Yeah. But if you want to call me African American, I own that too. So thank you for clearing that up for me.
No, awesome.
It also seems to me, though, on the not being a person who is Jewish, that y'all are not trying to have that 12,000 members, or are you? Because it doesn't seem like the Jewish faith is. So Christianity, how I look at it, it looks like they are trying, check, I want to add another person to the roll call. I want to add another person to the roll call. I want to increase this number. It doesn't, to me, with all of my experience with just having Jewish friends and being kind of in that world, that Jewish people are trying to grow their religion. They're not trying to grow their religion. At least it seems to me.
So it's interesting because, people can become Jews. You can convert to Judaism.
Yep.
My tradition teaches me that if somebody calls me and says, I want to join Judaism, I have an obligation to turn them away 3 times. Not because I don't want them, right?
Give it to me.
But because I want them to really want it. I want them to do it. I want it to just like, for the same thing for me, like learning that Hebrew is really hard. If you got to fight for a little bit, it's going to be meaningful.
Or being an actor was really hard when you went to New York City, and you're like,
right. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe this isn't my thing, right? So I'm not mean about it.
Right.
But for example, somebody will call me saying they want to convert. I say, that's great. I'm tied up for the next week. Give me a call in 2 weeks. 95% of the time they call me in 2 weeks. Like that's a good sign. But if they don't call me, I don't call them because that's proselytizing according to us, and we don't do that.
Yes, that's the thing. That's the big difference.
Yeah. Now, you know, some of my Christian colleagues, they don't get it. They're like, Andrew, why aren't you going out there? And, because it's just, you know what? I think it's because for centuries we were so persecuted
Yes.
as Jews. Like it's just not part of what our faith is. Listen, if I had 12,000 people who wanted to come to services, I'll figure out a way to accommodate them. But there aren't as many of us too.
Sure.
And what's also challenging too is my understanding of being a Christian and being a Jew. You can be a Jew and a good Jew.
Yeah.
Some of my Jewish brothers and sisters will disagree with me, but you can be a good Jew and not believe in God.
Oh, I will tell you this. I think actually every last one of my Jewish friends they don't really believe in God. I would say they're probably agnostic at best. But it's not like, so I know that to be true. I know that you could be absolutely a great Jewish person and even honor your faith. But for me, my friends who are there, it's more of a history and a historical, like cultural thing versus like I have friends who would never have a Christmas tree because it goes, although it's not like they care. It's not about Jesus. It's not about Jesus. It's not even about, Abba. It's just very not a part of their culture. So I agree with that. I've seen very great Jewish people who absolutely don't even really believe in God. And so I'm always a challenge to them.
That's my biggest challenge because, when I talk to my friend who's one of those rock stars,
right?
In order to be, and this is my understanding, in order to be, a Christian leading a meaningful life, you have to go and give praise and you got to give thanks and you got to go to church on Sunday. Where for a certain number of Jews, you have to go to the synagogue. But to the type of people that I'm working with and teaching, that's not a requirement.
Sure.
You can be a really strong cultural Jew. I get it all the time. I'll be in the grocery store and people will see me and they're like, "Oh, Rabbi, I am such a bad Jew." And I'm like, "Who did you murder?"
Right.
They're like, "Well, I didn't murder anybody." I said, "What did you steal?"
Right.
They're like, "I didn't steal anything." So why are you so bad? Because I haven't gone to synagogue.
You know what? Go on.
No, but then I'll say to them, that shouldn't define what's good or bad for you, because guess what? I know people who go to the synagogue, I'm not naming any names, who aren't that good, right? So it's about your morals and your values. So for me, a lot of the teaching that I do is helping those Jews who don't feel necessarily the spiritual part.
Sure.
But yet our history, our culture, it's so rich with values.
It's rich.
It teaches you how to, and so that to me can help us not just become good Jews, but be better people.
It seems to me when you say that here, for the people who are not Jewish and who maybe come from a Christian background, can see the similarity. This is what's interesting, because that same propensity exists in the Christian world, which then goes, okay, wait a minute. What is it that we all are hearing? What lie are we all hearing? And it is acts. It is works. It's things that we must do in order to become worthy of this thing, right? And so what I love is you're speaking against that. Like, oh, did you murder someone? If you didn't murder anybody, why are you a bad Jewish person? Because you didn't go to synagogue? Well, is that really what it's about? Did God tap me on the shoulder to make sure you go to synagogue? It better be something bigger than that, right? And that's what
I have a guy in my congregation who is not a regular synagogue goer, and he's had a successful life, but a rough life. And he learned that in our community there were a lot of seniors, including Holocaust survivors, who were hungry. So this guy, who really had not been involved Jewishly, heard about it, and he said to me, "Well, what can I do?" I said, "Well, you can feed him." He now has this successful food pantry where he feeds 150 of these people twice a month he brings food to them. To me, that's what this is about. Like, everybody needs to find their way to make the world a little bit better than it was before they entered. And if that's going to synagogue and praying for you, okay, I would push you a bit more, though. Like, take some of the lessons from the synagogue and figure out how to really make the world better, because there's so much broken out there. I mean, we all know the world is a mess. Our country's a mess.
It's a mess.
And the values that we should be learning in our sanctuaries, whatever they are, should be about love and community and equality and justice. And we got to live those.
Yes.
Not just pray about them.
Amen, brother. Tell me this. So in the Jewish faith, Christians are always pushing, the whole thing is to have relationship with this entity. In the Jewish faith, does that exist there too? Like, where you want to have relationship with this big I am God?
So the great thing, and that's the thing that I love about my Jewish understanding of God, and this is hard for some folks to understand.
Give it to me.
In Judaism, we don't know God's name. We know that it's made up of 4 letters, but yet we don't know how to pronounce those 4 letters. So God remains a bit of a mystery.
Yes.
And if you start to say, oh, I know God, I know those 4 letters, I know exactly what I need to do to connect with God, that's not what my Judaism teaches me. God remains somewhat mysterious. But the beautiful thing with that is we're supposed to spend our days trying to get closer to understanding what God is, and at the same time appreciate that we are created in the image of God, so inside of us is that spark.
I think I'm Jewish. That's how I feel. I'm like, oh, that sounds what I do.
I love it.
Oh,
and
God.
Yeah, and so
I'm scared of people who have the answers.
What's that?
I'm scared of people who have all the answers.
Yeah,
I mean, because,
and that's where, and again, there's certainly parts of my tradition that say there are right and wrong ways, and there are many in my tradition who say that I'm wrong, and that's fine. I like a good debate, but there's the name Israel comes from the Bible, and Jacob was the grandson of Abraham and Sarah.
That's right.
And he has this wrestling match in the Bible with
an angel.
With an angel, and I believe it was God. And God then changes his name to Yisrael, which means one who wrestles with God and prevails. Ooh. And to me, I am proud to be a child of Israel. And I don't think you have to necessarily be Jewish to be a child of Israel. But to me, I'm a God wrestler. Not violent, not a violent thing. But like every day I wake up and I'm like, okay, God, okay, universe, let me try to figure this out. Let me get a little bit closer. And I always say I know it'll be time to retire when I don't want to do that wrestling match anymore. And I don't think I'll ever want to stop that.
I don't know. You make me want to cry thinking about that. It's beautiful.
And
it's profound.
Some days it's easy and some days it's really tough.
Yeah, that is.
And you can't do it alone. You can't do it alone. You need each other, and you got to wrestle together.
Which now you're saying something that's making me.
I'm sorry.
No, it was that imagery of the one who wrestles with God and prevails. Like, this thing is, here's the mystery. Come and find it. I like that, because I was almost going to say, come and get it, but no. Come and find it. Yeah.
Because some of us don't ever want to do it. And you know what? If I didn't listen to my grandfather's stories in my early teens, if I didn't listen to my professor in college, I don't know what I'd be doing right now. But I wouldn't have found it. Or at least begun let me tell you, I haven't found it yet. I'm still searching.
No, I get it. What European nation was your grandfather from? Are you aware?
So I am a big mutt.
Yes, as we all are.
On that side of the family, the town is now located in eastern Poland.
Okay.
Where he's from, But I kind of was all over Europe, and my ancestry DNA, don't ask me this, I don't get it. Sweden.
I get it.
Do
No.
I look Swedish? No.
Well,
But
can I
my
tell you
daughter has
something?
blue eyes.
You actually do look very Swedish. You do.
Do I?
Because so when I went to university, the first 2 years, I went to university in Monaco, University of Southern Europe. And for whatever reason, like 75% of the student body were Swedes. And and I learned a whole bunch about Swedes. Like I know how to curse you out to this day in Swedish.
Well, so do you know what a fartinder is? I lived in Sweden totally coincidentally to this, but I spent a high school abroad.
Did
I
you
was in
really?
Malmo. I lived in Malmo.
Malmo.
And
Okay. Who am I do?
a speed bump was a farthinder. I thought that was the
Bartender.
funniest thing. That's the
So
only thing I remember.
no, all I remember is all of the curse words. And how are you? Who am I do?
Fartinder, yeah.
Yeah, but other than that, it's just
And
like all the bad
so,
words. And I was
yeah.
like, what? But my point is, if you went to Sweden, you know how many Swedes look like you?
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I
Yes,
don't
there
know.
were. There certainly were blonde hair, blue eyed, but there certainly were a lot of dark hair, dark eyed Swedes
That's
as well.
true.
And I was
That's
like, oh, so note to self, that is just a stereotype. Like I had to learn that. I was like, oh, okay. Because I had like Greta in my head, like blonde and I don't know, but
yeah. That's
some of the girls
okay.
certainly lined up with that. But oh my goodness, I lost my train of thought. But what I wanted to say was that you what I love about how you bring this all together is you keep the mystery alive. And by the way, that is something that has come up no matter who I interview with many different religious beliefs, not religious at all. Just the people who seem to dig in to the bread of life and all that it is are people who see life, God, as a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
I actually interviewed this guy and he said the most beautiful story. He told me this story of a son that I think a friend of his told him this story. Like he's walking with his little boy and his little boy is looking at his little son is looking at the trees and it's just a wonder of what this big, beautiful tree is. And he starts asking about leaves. Like, what are those things? And the father has a moment of sadness because he doesn't want to tell them what they are, because the moment he tells them, he'll know. And he won't ask the questions anymore. So I love that you want to keep the questions, the curiosity, the mystery alive, because it causes us to seek after it. Now, you say something in your bio that I was reading. You said that this kind of process became really big for you when you were touched with Kabbalism. For those
Yeah.
of us who do not know, what is Kabbalah?
Kabbalah is basically Jewish mysticism.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of what we've talked about, that
Mm-hmm.
God is this entity that we truly can't wrap our minds around.
Yeah.
And over the centuries, Kabbalah has attempted not to explain God, but to give a symbolic pathway
Mm-hmm.
towards getting closer to God. That pathway consists of things like meditation and prayer and study, kindness and building communities. And through all of those actions, we get a glimpse of the holiness that is God.
I love it.
One of the things, and it reminded me of your story, my favorite Jewish philosopher, Abraham Joshua Heschel, says, that we have these moments in our life where we are radically amazed. And radically amazed is like that. If you've ever sat, whether it's a sunset or a leaf or a moment with somebody special, and you just go,
I'm radically amazed.
There's a God, right?
Yes.
And then your rational mind takes over and says, oh, stop being silly. I can explain. Like, because we can't live in the state of radical amazement. We would go almost crazy, right? It's too much.
It is.
But we should all have those moments because they remind us. And I don't know, did you get to see the movie Soul yet?
No, but actually it's on my list I'm off today, so it's on my list to watch. I need to
That
watch it.
movie is all about radical amazement.
Radical amazement.
And it was so beautifully done. And I watched it with my kids thinking it'll be a cute Disney movie. It's an adult film, and it's
It's
a spiritual film.
mm,
And it reminds us how we all need to have that moment, that we become skeptical in this world and we fail to see we are surrounded. I mean, just this encounter with you, like I really needed this today. It's
me too.
hard, and just you've
Mm.
lifted me up,
Well,
and
thank you. You did the
you know,
same for
it's
me.
beautiful. And we need that with each other.
Tell me this, Rabbi. What would you want people to take away from our talk?
I think that we need to all feel safe talking about our spiritual journey,
Oh, yes. I love
because
that.
everybody out there,
Has
I
one,
don't care what your journey's been, you have a story.
don't
And
they?
your story allows you to teach and lift people up. So if anything, I hope everybody just shares their story.
I love it.
And if you think your story is boring, you DM me and I'll talk to you and I'll get you on Shay's show and you'll
Yes,
see
I'm
your
serious.
story's
I
not
love that.
boring.
I love that. Rabbi, I almost called you father. I'm so
You
sorry.
can call me Andrew.
No, but I like Rabbi Andrew Jacobs. I love it. By the way, it's just a beautiful name. I always like to end my interviews with like in the spirit of James Lipton. I used to love watching Inside the Actors Studio, and I love those fireball questions he would end with. So, in the spirit of James Lipton, what sound or noise do you love?
The sound of hugging.
Ooh, I love that. You're the first person who gave it, but I hear that. It's a it's like a quiet.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that sound of hugging. What sound or noise don't you love?
I got to think about chewing. I don't like chewing. You're going to get the good, bad, and ugly from me.
That's what I want. Whiskey or wine?
Oh, wine.
Praise him. Red or white?
I like white, but I tend to go with white because my wife likes white.
Okay. Um, if you if you could do something other than what you're doing, well, if you weren't, or I should say, if you were not a rabbi, what would you be? What would you be doing?
So I'm going to put the theater aside because we talked about that. But
Yep.
my other dream job is an architect.
I love it. Their handwriting is awesome too, by the way.
Gosh.
Right? I love that. What's your favorite word, Rabbi?
Uh-oh.
I got to
Oh,
call. What is your favorite word?
I think it's the word. I think it's the word yes because I don't like the word no.
I love
You
that.
know, like just the
Yes.
possibilities of yes.
Yes. What is your favorite curse word?
Oh boy.
I know I'm bad. I'm asking the rabbi that.
Um, I'm feeling stumped because I'm never really allowed to say such things.
You
But I
never,
got to have one. Well, no. Oh, trust me, I do. But like, with all these people,
right?
I think my the one that I often, if I stub my toe, it's the S word.
The S. Okay. I love it. I'll take that in. I love it. And yes is the favorite word. Oh, I love it. The S word is the favorite curse word. Okay, Rabbi, here is my last question to you. If heaven exists, what do you want God to say when you get there?
It's a great question. I would want God to say, "You haven't completed the task, but boy, oh boy, did you get a lot done."
Oh, Rabbi, I just love you. That is so profound and beautiful. Yes. There, even in the end, you keep the mystery, brother. I love it. I love it. I really appreciate you sharing time and space with me. It has meant the world to me. I hope it has been a joy for you as well.
It has been a real joy. The time flew, and I learned a lot from you. So I
Oh
thank you
my
for it.
gosh. Thank you so much, Rabbi. Have a beautiful day.
Thanks, guys. I hope we see each other in person one day.
Me too.